It's no secret that the primary drive behind big Hollywood franchise movies is to make as much money as possible, but in the last few years, the money has started to dry up and some big decisions have to be made. In the past, Hollywood executives have fallen back on those safe bets to work for them, whether that be a sequel, a remake, or a nostalgia bait film, but now audiences have been burnt so many times by these films, they're aware to that fact, and so getting bums in seats becomes much more difficult. So why have audiences been burnt? Well, the sheer lack of quality is certainly a key point, and if we look into that further, the people being hired to make these films aren't qualified enough, and so you're getting risky appointments compromising your safe bet film.
Not a great plan.
Another big issue for many of these films is there simply isn't enough preparation time because there is such an eagerness to get it on the conveyor belt as soon as possible. And as the old saying goes, fail to prepare, prepare to fail. And an example of that we've seen recently is with the new Star Wars trilogy, where with episode 7 we had J.J. Abrams do a film which had many issues with it, but it still worked as a foundation film. But then Rian Johnson came in and did his own thing, and then we've seen in episode 9 that JJ wanted to try and rectify a lot of the issues from episode 8, and so we've got a tug of war in between this new trilogy, and so it ended up being a big failure. And also this happened.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
What the fuck are you doing?
And keeping with Star Wars, they have already planned out their next slate of films, with James Mangold doing the next Star Wars movie where it tells the story of the Force and the origin of the Force of the Prime Jedi. Now this is quite a dangerous film because they're going to be dealing with the mystery of the Force, and when you're dealing with any mystery, everyone will have their own interpretation of what that is, and so when someone's telling you exactly how it is, it's going to cause some conflict here and there. And added to the fact this is coming from James Mangold, who recently did Logan, which people enjoyed, but also he did Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, which many people did not enjoy, and so which way is he going to now lean into? The next film will be Dave Filoni's film, which will bring together many of the characters from the Mandoverse like Din Djarin, Grogu, Ahsoka, etc. into one big film, which will culminate this story which has been taking place within these TV shows on Disney+. Now Dave Filoni is a veteran of the franchise at this point, and many still regard him very highly, but the thing is, with a few of the recent shows like season 3 of Mandalorian and also Ahsoka and the Obi-Wan Kenobi show, they haven't been to the quality we expect from Star Wars, and especially when you look at series like Andor, which had significantly better writing compared to those series. So will there be enough interest from people who've watched all of these shows to go to see the film? That will be the big turning point of whether this one becomes a success or a failure. And the final new Star Wars movie announced is where we'll see the return of Daisy Ridley as Rey, with Kathleen Kennedy saying, well, we're 15 years out from Rise of Skywalker, so we're post-war, post-First Order, and the Jedi are in disarray. There's a lot of discussion around who are the Jedi, what are they doing, what's the state of the galaxy, as she's attempting to rebuild the Jedi Order based on the books, based on what she promised Luke, so that's where we're going. So far from that statement alone, there's not a lot of optimism that can be built from that, and so you got to think what people are actually talking about with their friends in the pub, for example, where someone says to another, remember those shit Star Wars films? Oh yeah mate, yeah. Remember Rey? Oh yeah. Well, they're doing more movies with her character. Oh okay, yeah, cool.
Oh shit, here we go again.
The director for this Rey film is Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy. Now she's won 2 Academy Awards for Best Documentary Short and also directed some Miss Marvel episodes, but that's pretty much as far as it goes in terms of her experience. And so this is a risky move still, even though she has won Academy Awards, but how transferable is being great at doing documentary shorts to doing a great massive franchise in Star Wars? You know, this is still risky, and when you're trying to turn the ship around in terms of your franchise failing and trying to get back onto a positive course, I wouldn't make a risky move here. This is where you'd leave this for later in the day, because this could ultimately sink your ship. Now it's all good me sparking doubt on the things they've announced, but let me give my own input into how I would go forward with the Star Wars universe. And the first thing I'll do is do a film based around the Sith. Long before the Skywalker saga, I want to see the origins of the Sith, and as we saw with the Joker film, people do like to see evil, people like to see a villain on screen, and I think it's now time to see more of the dark side of the Force and see those legends unfold in front of our eyes. However, another direction Star Wars could go in is by focusing on Cal Kestis, who is the main character from the Jedi games from EA. And that's because he's already built a great foundation of goodwill already among Star Wars fans, because he's a well-formed character within those games, and I think now people are demanding to see more content with this character, and so you've got to demand, give us the supply.
Give me the meat and give it to me raw.
Last year we had some significant flops with Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, Shazam! Fury of the Gods and The Marvels, just to name a few, but we also had some big successes, and it's worth looking at the breadcrumbs of those successes to see where these franchises can go moving forward. Now the whole Barbenheimer craze was such a lightning in a bottle moment. It is difficult to recreate that, but both films had their merits, and also both directors in Christopher Nolan and Greta Gerwig have big fan bases behind them where they'll see any film they put out. And people have been saying recently that Tom Cruise is the last remaining movie star working today, and perhaps movie stars are dying out. And if that is the case, maybe directors will take their place, because people do flock to see films by Jordan Peele, by Christopher Nolan, by Denis Villeneuve, by Yorgos Lanthimos, by Robert Eggers, by Greta Gerwig. And even this year, Bong Joon-ho, director of Parasite, he's doing a new film called Mickey 17 starring Robert Pattinson, and we don't know much about the film, but we just trust that he'll provide good content because he's done it before in the past. And that's the big thing. With these directors, you're really inclined to see these films because you have faith in them that they will give you exactly what you want. And in terms of giving the audience what they want, one film in 2023 really captured that expertly, and that was Godzilla Minus One. Because even if you weren't a massive Godzilla fan, you could still appreciate that everyone in this film was pulling in the same direction, with a great story with characters who you actually don't want to see killed by Godzilla, and with Godzilla looking and being as menacing as he's ever been. And it's so great that the film's done so well, because firstly, it's a film not in the English language, and secondly, it's the 37th film in the Godzilla franchise, which just goes to show what you can do if you get the basics right. And thanks to the positive word of mouth surrounding this film, it's expanded into more screens and even released a minus colour version as well. And it just goes to show that if you can get the online discussion, especially talking about a film and talking about it in such a positive manner, it will spread and people will go and see it and take that chance, because a lot of people now do put a lot of their trust in the people they read or in the people they watch online. Far gone are the days where movie critics on the TV or in newspapers have a significant impact. Instead now, it's those on YouTube like myself and those on social media. And as we know with social media, negativity drives clicks. And so when a new film comes out, if it doesn't receive mass appreciation from the get-go, it is there to be got at. And with scrutiny at an all-time high because of so many people doing this, it means there is that pile-on mentality. So there won't just be one video about it, there'll be a bloody catalogue of videos all pulling it apart, and this is all in the first week of its release. And so for certain people, they won't take a chance on the film because instead they're putting their full faith behind their favourite creators and potentially getting stuck in an echo chamber. And so you can imagine if, say, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire came out today, there'd be so much online discussion about why isn't Harry Potter using the time turner from the previous film? You know, Voldemort's just come back, where the fuck is the time turner? Son of a bitch! And with all that noise going on, it really could have given that film a negative look, but instead at the time people went to see the film, these things were mentioned, but they were sort of just overlooked and pushed to the side because we were enjoying many other aspects of the movie. While we're on the subject of Harry Potter, let's look into the future of this franchise, and the main thing there is the new HBO series which J.K. Rowling is involved in. As we saw last year with Hogwarts Legacy, that game was the best selling game of 2023, and so there is still a big interest in the Wizarding world. This upcoming series will delve more into the books, but one of its big hurdles will be the casting, because the casting in the films was just so spectacular, and it'll be a tough task to get people to buy into this new vision of Harry Potter, especially as it's only been about 10 years since the film series concluded. Keeping with the fantasy, let's also look at Lord of the Rings. Amazon put a lot of money behind the Rings of Power, but season 1 was not very good at all, and so we'll have to wait and see how season 2 turns out. But the thing to focus on here is that this year there is a new Lord of the Rings film, and this is an animated film called The War of the Rohirrim. In recent years, animation has been getting a lot more of the respect it deserves, and I think a lot of that's actually down to the fact it's on a streaming platform, so it's much more accessible. And I think now with films like Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse with different animation styles, it really has given this genre a whole new lease of life. And I think with Lord of the Rings, this is actually a good idea for it to go into this route, because you can do so much in the animated world. And with Lord of the Rings, there's so many different wars and so many different battles happening. It seems like it's a perfect fit for animation, especially from a Japanese director as well, who's got a great track record. Now, as much as these companies behind these films want to keep pumping out content to make more money, there's still just come a time where you just have to have a break and let people miss these characters and miss this universe and create that demand for more. And I think we've seen this in the gaming industry pretty well actually, where Assassin's Creed has released a game every single year and people got bored. But on the other hand, if we look at Grand Theft Auto, there's been a gap of over 10 years between their previous game and their new game coming out next year, and as we can see with the view count for their trailer, there certainly is a lot of people wanting to get back to this universe. And this is where I believe Marvel made a crucial error, because after Avengers Endgame, they should have had a break. They should have let people miss this universe for a bit, really work on what they're going to do next, but instead we got Spider-Man Far From Home out that same summer, so we're starting the new story only a few months after finishing the old one, and people weren't ready for it. People needed a bit of time to just sink in exactly what they've seen from this previous saga. And so we've got to a point with Marvel where even myself, who's someone who's watched all of the MCU content, I just couldn't be bothered to watch What If Season 2 or Echo, because I know exactly what result I'm going to get from these shows. Because after things like Secret Invasion and a good number of other Marvel shows, I feel I know exactly how I'm going to feel already, because it's all coming from the same kitchen, and at this moment I'd rather eat somewhere else because I don't want to waste my time.
Don't waste my motherfucking time!
Thankfully, due to the strikes, Marvel has a more limited schedule this year, with Deadpool 3 being its big film in the summer. And I think that's the perfect film to have, because with Deadpool it's going to be more fun. We're going to have Hugh Jackman back as Wolverine, the X-Men coming into it. It's all going to be a bit more relaxed, and hopefully I feel like with this movie they can maybe address certain things, maybe the whole Kang situation as well. And I think with Marvel they just need to set their new direction, because the whole multiverse thing hasn't really worked. I think a lot of people know the stakes aren't there with a multiverse. You're never sure what's going on. You just think the person who's just died is going to come back next week. It doesn't really matter, and so they got to get back to a point where things matter again. Currently Marvel just has so many pots on the go and so many loose connections. They just have to put it all together and start to be a bit more focused, and maybe just focus on the X-Men and the Fantastic Four for a while. Just build them up and build Daredevil up and build maybe Blade up. Just build this new core group and stop going all over the place in terms of all these different characters and always introducing new characters every single film and every single end credit scene. Just sort of pull it back a bit, and I think that's the main thing with Marvel. They've got to streamline it a bit more, because everything's just so far open right now, people are just getting lost. At least for Marvel, the Infinity Saga did work out well, which is more to say than the DCEU, which has now come to an end with Aquaman 2, and we're going to have James Gunn's new DC universe starting in 2025 with Superman Legacy. With this reboot, David Corenswet will be our Superman, and we've just had an announcement that Millie Alcock from House of the Dragon fame will be Supergirl. James Gunn has built up a decent reputation over the years, especially with his Guardians of the Galaxy films, and so I do think people will give him a chance here with his new DC vision, but at the same time he just have to make a great first impression, because we're sort of done playing this game of DC. We've seen so many different reboots and so many different tries at this, that if you don't do well in the first few tries with these first sort of wave of films, then I think a lot of people are going to be like, okay, this is the same old shit all over again. But DC aren't putting all their eggs in one basket, because they do have the Joker sequel out this year, and there will be more films from the Batman universe with Robert Pattinson's Batman, so they do have that on the side. So if this does go south, they can continue with those films and just maybe put this in the can.
Throw it away! No! Throw it!
With there being so many sequels this year, with Ghostbusters, Alien, Gladiator all getting new films, it'll be interesting to see which ones do well and which ones don't, because of course all of these want to spark more films for their respective franchises, but it is easy to overlook the original films that these sequels are stemming from, and how much the creativity and passion behind them is what got people to watch them in the first place. And original films are what people like to see, but of course they are a big risk. And you've got to say fair play to films like E.T. though, because E.T. is a film which is still its own thing. It's never had a sequel, and it could easily have had a sequel, but Spielberg has said that's a one and done film, and you got to respect that. Because if we head on over to Disney, that's a company who've had no issue making remakes and sequels of their beloved stories. Disney's CEO Bob Iger has recently admitted that they have been putting messaging above storytelling in their recent films, and they do hope to reverse that going forward, but of course that is going to take some time to actually come into fruition. And we do have some films coming up like the new Snow White, which I think is pretty much dead in the water, because that stars Rachel Zegler, who's got a lot of hate from a lot of people online, but I mean, she didn't help herself as well with some of the things she comes out with. And also you got films like Toy Story 5, which is another sequel where we think Toy Story 4 was maybe one step too far. It just about had its reasons of existence, but with Toy Story 5 that's another one for Pixar to make. And even this year with Inside Out 2, we've just said about sequels not being so great for Disney. I mean, look at Finding Dory, look at Monsters University, look at Incredibles 2 as well. All of these have not done so well. No one really remembers them that much compared to those original films, and I feel like Inside Out 2 is probably, unfortunately, in that same bracket where it's going to become that thing where the novelty of the first film was so great, but they can't replicate that in a sequel. And in terms of live action, they have to move away from these remakes of their animated classics and focus more on some new ideas, because Pirates of the Caribbean did pretty well, but that is just one thing, one example. Where's the others? Have they really run out of ideas?
I've got nothing left. I've got nothing left.
For Disney going forward, it looks like they are, and I hope they are doing so, and that is going back to 2D animated films. It's been over 10 years since they've done one, and like I was saying earlier, it's given people time to miss it, and so bring it back, because 2D animation is timeless, right? We've seen with some of the classic films. Look at them now, they still hold up today. With all these films I've mentioned though, of course the writing has to be to a good standard, and it's interesting that the new Jurassic World film will be written by the original Jurassic Park writer. With this new Jurassic World film, it will be a fresh start with no old characters returning, and I do hope that this time round they do focus more on the horror and get back to that Jurassic Park style where we had those really cool horror set pieces, because like we saw with Godzilla Minus One, if they can bring the horror back to the dinosaurs like they did with Godzilla, that'd be fantastic. Because we saw with 65 that tried and failed, but I think they can do something here. It feels like with dinosaurs they haven't fully tapped into the potential yet. Now of course I haven't gone into every franchise, but pretty much all of them at this moment in time do have a critical decision to make for their future. Like for example, who's going to be the new Bond? I mean, that's a massive decision to be made, because whoever that Bond is will be the next Bond for potentially the next 4 to 5 films. But considering the current climate of the TikTok generation who want that instant gratification, you can't neglect the stage of filmmaking that is distribution, because it is so important. But unfortunately, many marketing companies seem to be out of touch with how to actually market their film. However, there have been some good examples, with Megan being one of them. When that trailer came out, the dance for that movie went viral on TikTok, and that momentum from TikTok really helped that film perform well. Likewise with the Sonic the Hedgehog movie, where when that trailer came out people were not very happy with the look of Sonic, but thanks to the discuss shown online, they did eventually change his appearance to something much better, and so that input was received and people felt like they became a value to the film, which meant they were more likely to support it because they actually felt like they were actually involved with the process. Now you can say in that example they were just fortunate to mess up in the first place for this to happen, but you can easily manipulate things with movies to make people feel that they want it and make people feel that they're involved. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see more of this in the future, where they actually purposely make something wrong so the audience online can fix it and then they feel that connection again. So keep an eye out for that. Moving forward for cinema and also TV shows, it looks like the genre of toys and games is going to be one to dominate for a little bit because of how well Mario and Barbie did by taking $1 billion at the box office. Many have already been announced, including a Monopoly movie, and of course these probably won't do as well as Mario and Barbie, but if they don't do well, they will still do very well when it comes to merchandise, and so that becomes the safe bet for these sort of films.
Hello, I like money.
With all these factors and more, the battle to get people into cinemas is still going to be a tough one. Streaming and on-demand doesn't help, but also with those things going up in price, it means that many people are going to resort to piracy, which of course has everything on there. And the ease of access of piracy is even better now because of things like Fire Sticks, where you can just plug it in your TV and boom, there you go, you've got everything on your TV ready to go.
Stop right there, criminal scum. Nobody breaks the law on my watch.
Having said that though, if these franchises can get their act together, more risks can be taken on original films, and all done so and distributed in a way which is more shrewd and ready for the modern world, then there is some optimism to be had here. Cinemas themselves though also have to pull their weight and offer incentives and offer the best big screen experience they can do so people aren't tempted to wait.
But I want it now!
The sad truth of the matter is a lot of what's been said here today and also in other videos will take time, and time equals money, and unfortunately a lot of these people in a position of power don't want to wait for that money, and so they won't see the bigger picture, but we can only hope. Anyway, that's just my thoughts on the state of Hollywood franchises at this time, but what are your thoughts? What would you do? Let me know in the comments below. And if you fancy another video on screen as a review that YouTube have recommended for you.